the top 10 Pokemon fan games. If you're a Pokemon fan, then there's a good chance you've seen at least one of these videos. And I mean, who wouldn't click on one? You love Pokemon and you want something new to play. Pretty simple. But over the years, I feel like these videos have gotten pretty stale. Why is that? Because almost all of them are exactly the same. Infinite Fusion, Reborn, Xenoverse, Insurgence, Uranium, Phoenix Rising. I bet 90% of these videos contain at least one of these games. Now don't get me wrong, there's a reason that these fan games at one point were, or still are, standing above almost everything else. But the majority of people clicking on that video know that these games exist. So today, I'm going to be showcasing 4 lesser known, but very good Pokemon fan games that are either completed or have enough content to keep you busy for a couple of days or even weeks. While I know a good few of you are just here to see the names of each game and take off, I do hope you'll at least stick around for each small showcase, as I will be covering what each one is about from my own personal experiences. It also really helps me as a creator and motivates me to make more videos like this. Let's start with one of my personal favorites, a criminally underrated fan game that lets you experience the world of Pokemon from a much different perspective. In Ash and Frost, you are not a trainer, and you aren't on a journey through a normal region. You play as a detective residing in the massive city of Riverview. Now before you question this game taking place in just one city, let me emphasize just how big it is. Riverview is split up into 4.5 region-sized maps, really giving you the feeling of exploring a real-life city and not your average Pokemon one. As you progress through the story, you'll unlock new districts to explore, each filled with different people, Pokemon, shops, and side quests. Oh yeah, the Pokemon. Say goodbye to running through tall grass. They instead roam the overworld in either an aggressive or passive manner. But what does this game have to offer feature-wise? First, a vast majority of Pokemon from Generations 1 through 9 are available to capture. Most normally required grinding has also been removed, as you can allocate your EVs in the stat menu at any point, and the main place for grinding is extremely close to the game's equivalent of a home base. On top of that, you also have access to 3 different difficulty modes with a significantly improved AI and the option to enable a hard level cap. So what about the story? What is that about? If everything above still wasn't enough to convince you, this game is also very plot focused. Rather than gyms and badges, Ash and Frost uses cases as a progression system. Consider each case as a story chapter of sorts, each one with different characters and mysteries to solve. I don't want to spoil too much about the plot, but keep in mind that if the early story beats feel a little bit lackluster, then don't worry, that feeling definitely won't stick around for very long. After that, I'm sure you're ready to put this video down and jump into the game, which I guess I can't really blame you for. But I've still got a few more games to cover, so stick around or come back later, because I promise they're good ones. So the next fan game I'm going to talk about is a much sillier and less serious one, but I still think it deserves way more attention than it's received. It's called Vinemon, a Pokemon game highly inspired by the content creator Vinesauce, who I admittedly had never watched or really heard of before. But despite probably missing a lot of the references the game threw at me, what I played was still quite enjoyable. There are over 200 Pokemon to capture, if you can even call them that, and a whole new region to explore. And to keep things even more fresh, there are over 150 new moves, 70 new abilities, a ton of custom music, and a plethora of quality of life features. Like Ash and Frost, this game uses an updated Generation 3 overworld style to keep that feeling of nostalgia, while looking way better than those original games did. If you're looking for something silly and charming, this is definitely the game for you. Moving on, let's talk about a fan game that was released just last year, called Pokemon Abstract. At first glance, other than its charming graphical approach, this game wouldn't seem very special. The thing is though, Abstract drops the idea of Pokemon's straight-line progression system. From the very start, rather than being told where to go, you're given 2 options on which part of the region you want to explore first. After collecting your first badge, you can either progress further with the path you chose, or go back and take a different path to completion. Some people might compare this to Scarlet and Violet's open world mechanic of being able to challenge gyms in any order, but it's not exactly like that. There are still some roadblocks you'll encounter that prevent you from doing things in the exact order you prefer. But thankfully, unlike Generation 9, there is actual level and team scaling. But a semi-open world gimmick isn't anything on its own. The region is very diverse with snowy mountains, grassy plains, ocean routes, and pretty forests to explore. As for the story, I think it's about average, but it's not really what I played for, so I personally didn't mind. Overall, while it may be a lot shorter than the 2 previous games, I still think it's worth a play if you're looking for something short and sweet. The final fan game in this video is very different from the previous 3 I've showcased. Formerly known as Pokemon Perish Song, Salt and Shadow is what the developers describe as Pokemon meets Dark Souls. Admittedly, I've never played a Dark Souls or Souls-like game, so I personally won't be able to make the comparison. The first thing I noticed when playing was just how lifeless the world was. And no, I absolutely do not mean that in a negative way. It felt like I was traveling through a world that was once filled with light, only to now be shrouded in darkness. In Pokemon Salt and Shadow, you are given 13 days until the world perishes. Every time you fully rest, a single day passes, making resource management very important. The world is also completely non-linear. The resting place of the final boss sits right above the starting area and can be challenged from the very beginning. With this in mind, you might be thinking, oh, I can just grind my team to a super high level and walk right in. Well, your Pokemon, they don't gain EXP. You'll have to traverse the map to collect stronger Pokemon and items, all while pushing through swarms of trainers. This is easily one of the most unique experiences I've had playing Pokemon, as there is a lot to explore and a lot of different ways to beat and play the game. But I should warn people that this isn't a game for everyone. Your Pokemon are not your friends. They are simply tools for your success, and you'll be forced to make a lot of sacrifices to overcome the challenges this world throws at you. Either way, I think it's worth a try for anyone looking for a different experience. If all of these games seem and look great, then why aren't they more popular? Sure, they all have threads on popular fangame forums, but the best source of publicity usually comes from YouTubers, which most of these games don't have much exposure from. Maybe not because they didn't seem interesting enough, but instead they might have lacked the content that most fangame YouTubers would use to clickbait them. But I hope you give these fangames and their developers some love, as positive attention is one of, if not the biggest, motivator we have. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like and subscribe. I hate being that guy, but only about 2% of my viewers are subscribed, and I do plan on sticking to fangames and ROM hacks for my long-form content. So be sure to subscribe if that does interest you. Anyways, I hope you have a nice day, and goodbye!